We are going to deep dive into reports and give you some really great inspiration to help you build some of your own. So whether you have used reports already and you're just looking for additional ways that you can um, get the insights that you need. Or if you are brand new to reports, this will give you some really great inspiration for reports that will be really useful and honestly really easy. It's really easy once you dive in. So we're going to build some together today. And with that, let's go ahead and dive in. Um, Taylor is really the perfect person to have here today. The reason why is because Taylor uses Monarch with most of her clients. She's a financial coach, and she told me a long time ago that when she brings her clients to the reports page, it really is that aha moment where folks get those insights that maybe they haven't seen anywhere else within Monarch. Um, and so that really inspired us to invite Taylor today to be the one to walk us through those aha moments and how to get the most out of reports. So with that, Taylor, I'll hand it to you for more of an introduction.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is so great. I'm really excited to go over reports. It's my favorite thing in Monarch. So yeah, like Jenna said, I'm a financial coach. So I help my clients with cash flow so that they can spend money on what's important to them, save for their goals, and most importantly, implement their cash flow system in Monarch Money so that they can get all this data and to stick to these goals that they have. So I do this through one-on-one coaching, and we also have a membership program where we do weekly live Q&A calls on how to implement their budget in Monarch Money. So I'm really excited to go over this reports with you, as well as if you have any a need to want to connect after, you can also find my videos on YouTube with my take on how to use Monarch Money on at the YouTube channel Evolving Money. So really looking forward to today. So, but I'd love Simon to introduce himself as well.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon. I'm a software engineer at Monarch Money. Been here for about 9 months, but I've been a user of Monarch for about a year and a half myself. Love the product. I've been involved in a lot of the reports improvements initiatives here at Monarch, including the launch of saved reports. We always love hearing feedback from you folks and continuing to improve it. So I'll be here to field any of the technical questions y'all might have. Jenna, hand it off to you.
All right, thanks. So my name is Jenna. I head up product marketing here, and I am just really passionate about making sure that all of our members have access to the information and education that will help them get the most out of using Monarch. So that's why we're here today. All right, let's talk about what is so special about reports. Why are we here today? Why should we care? So there's a few things. One is that reports give you a really visual representation of your money. And the reason why this is important is because it can often lead you to insights that you might not have uncovered if you were looking at the numbers in a different way. In a table, for example, there's just so many ways that you can sort of slice and dice and see things in a different way than you might see otherwise. Also, some folks are just more visual in nature. And so being able to see their money visually is really helpful. This example here, this is the Sankey diagram. Hopefully lots of you are familiar with it, but if not, we will dive in and show you all about how to interpret the Sankey today. But really what this shows you is your money in and your money out. So just a really powerful way to kind of pack a ton of information into one screen. Another thing that we find really special about reports is that it truly allows you to slice, dice, and customize your money in ways that, again, you might not see represented on other parts or pages of Monarch. So you can find those insights that are most helpful to you. And like I said, you can then save those reports and come back to them anytime, really just making it super easy to know where your money is in a way that is most helpful to you. So as an example, what we're looking at on the screen right now is a way that you can filter by, let's say, account. Maybe you only wanted to look at your spending report for specific accounts, maybe just your joint accounts, or maybe just your individual accounts, maybe just your personal versus just your business. Those are just a couple of examples. You can also use tags. We will go into all of these examples in more detail, but really it just allows you a ton of personalization. And you can see your hard work pay off. So, one thing Taylor told me a while back was that often when she is working with clients who really start engaging with their money and using Monarch, or working with the coach, reports are a really powerful way to actually see that momentum, or the progress. And oftentimes, when you look back at a period of time, there is a really clear marker for when you start to take those initiatives, and you can see your hard work pay off. You can see your spending come down. You can see the mindfulness that is created in the process, and the ability to then, of course, put more of that money towards savings or other goals. So that's what's so special about reports. We are, let me just cover a quick agenda for the rest of our time together. We're going to show you some popular use cases within this deck, and then we are going to build some reports together. We find that this is the most helpful way to really understand how to use the product, is to build alongside us instead of just looking at slides. So we're going to do that together. So I would ask if you can, if you have a desktop available, to have that handy so that we can build some of these together. And then we'll do Q&A. And just as a heads up, we had a ton of wonderful questions come in ahead of time. We do also want to open up the floor for any questions that come in during our session today. So please drop those in the chat. I'll be monitoring them. If you have specific reports that you would like to see us build live together, drop those requests in the chat as well. Cool. I'm going to hand it over to Taylor now.
Awesome. Well, yeah, so we want to go through a couple of use cases, and already some of you are putting in the chat some really excellent suggestions that we are actually going to go over today. So great questions so far. So one of these reports that we can do, one of the ones that I find really helpful with my clients, is by looking at just merchants. If you're looking at who you're actually sending your money to, right? This is a really important thing to know. In this example, we have one on Starbucks. This is a report just saying how much have you spent in Starbucks over the last year. And you can see that trend. You can see how that's changing. This is great for specific areas of spend where you have a favorite store, or maybe Amazon. I know that's a problem area for a lot of people, or a good good area of spend for some. But actually seeing where the money's going and who you're giving it to is a really amazing thing to be able to see with reports that you couldn't really see as well in other areas of Monarch. Another use case would be to see your discretionary spending or just variable spending. That's usually an area where a lot of folks try to separate their expenses from fixed to variable, fixed to discretionary, the things that you actually pull out your credit card to swipe on, and to where a lot of behavior and choices lie. And to be able to see where those choices and those values are for you is looking at these reports on discretionary spend. You can see this as a change over time, as well as there's lots of different visual ways to look at it, right? You're able to see it in a way that makes most sense for you, where you can see on the left-hand side, we're looking at a bar graph that can kind of show you a more visual way of where you spend the most dollars in what category. But on the right side, we're seeing how your discretionary spend changes over time. You can look at this graph right here. It's really small, but you can see this goes from October to February. I think a lot of us can relate that we're seeing that huge spike in November and December for the holidays, right? And actually seeing that visually, just the proof of that, can be really, really helpful as you plan for next year's holidays expenses. If this is how your expenses go up, you can make better plans for the future. So another way to view this is just overall, right? We can slice and dice, like Jenna said at the beginning, we're slicing and dicing. We can see specific chunks of where your money's going, but we can also see a holistic view. Where is all of the money in our household actually moving to? And again, getting a visual, you can really see the larger chunks and where those things that are most expensive or most important to you are. The Venn diagram's a huge hit there. Another use case that someone actually commented on too is using tags. Yes, you can use tags to run reports, and I think it's a really valuable thing. A lot of people kind of forget about tags, but reports have made tags insanely awesome. So this is a really great example using a tag is for vacations. A lot of folks ask me, well, where should I put my vacation expenses? Should it all go in the vacation category, or should I use a tag for it? And this is my case for using a tag is look at this report. When you use a tag, it's able to consolidate all of your spending amongst many different categories so that when you say, hey, how much should we spend in Europe? Or when we went to New York this summer or the summer vacation, we can see how much we spent on flights, hotels, restaurants, entertainment, and just general shopping, getting those souvenirs, right? So this allows you to then better plan for next year's trip, right? If you do this summer trip every year, you can say, well, last year's flights and hotels were this month, and we went a little nuts on some of the theater tickets, so maybe we won't do that next year, and it'll save us some money on the trip, right? You can really plan better for those trips, but also have really great insights on, hey, how much fun did you have on this trip, right? So that is my favorite thing with tags. And just another example of using tags is the tax reporting, or just kind of keeping track of business expenses, or what is a tax deductible expense that you need to be able to give to your accountant. When you use tags, you're able to, again, consolidate this data and show how those expenses are categorized in multiple different categories, right? Otherwise, if you put it all in one category, you're just seeing one big category. But when you use tags, you get a lot more detail on where those deductions or those things that you need to send to your accountant, where those expenses actually are. So using tags is a really an amazing way to do that. The other way is just really being mindful of the way you're using categories. So this is an example of use for a business owner or a rental property. In this case, we're going to use a rental property. You can see your rental income against your rental expenses. This is a really beautiful thing to make sure you're charging enough rent. If you have rental properties, you want to make sure you're charging enough to make sure you're making a little bit of a profit, at least breaking even, right? So we really want to make sure that we can capture all of those expenses, and not just the mortgage, but also the maintenance, any of the utilities that you have to pay rather than your renters. But you can do this also for a business. You can use your business income minus business expenses, and you can see that as the sand key as well, all within one Monarch account. This is not within multiple accounts. You can set this up to just see your specific areas of spend, just as is, all within the report section. So I'd love to build some of these together with you today so we can actually see them being put into action. And so let's go through a few scenarios. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen into Monarch. And again, Jenna said you're welcome to pull up Monarch yourself, and we can build reports together. And if you have a report that you would like me to show, please let us know. I'd love to, again, show you what that would look like and how you might build that in Monarch Money. So first off, reports section is right here, and it is on the desktop. I do not believe it is on the mobile app, so you do need a desktop to look at the reports in this case, in just the reports case. You do have cash flow on the mobile or iPad. Cash flow is super helpful, and we'll go through those reports as well. But for right now, we're going to stick to this reports section. So if you're on a desktop, you'll do this with us. So the first report I want to go through is really just a very simple cash flow report. There's 3 reports at the top here. We have cash flow report, and that's going to show us both income and expenses. And this sand key diagram is often a huge hit for getting a nice visual of how big each slice of the pie is on where your money is going. The thing to utilize is going to be your dates and filters. Well, there's a lot of buttons actually to push, I'm not going to lie. They're all so useful and amazing. Press all the buttons. But a key piece is I'm going to show you, let's say just last year. You want to say from last year, you want to see how much you've made as far as income and expenses, how the year went, so that you can better plan for 2025. So I would click on that date button right in the top right-hand side of the screen here, and I would click on last year in order to do that. Of course, you can do a lot of different things here as far as changing the date to whatever what time period you would like to do. If we're doing that, I'd also just say I'm going to run a report on everything. I want to see all my expenses, all my income, and I just want to see it all together, and that's where we get this beautiful sand key diagram. If you don't have a filter on, that's fine too. that'll show you the exact same report. You do not have to filter for everything. If you want to start slicing and dicing, that's when we're going to use filters. But if we wanted to see everything, then we're going to have just the date really changed, and then you can change the different viewpoints of this cash flow view. So you have by category and by group. Category is very useful to get really nitty gritty on where all the money is going. By group is if you just want a big snapshot overview of where money is flowing. So that is the Sankey diagram. That is a cash flow report. Super useful when you're looking at, kind of reviewing how the last year went, maybe preparing for tax time and seeing how your net income relates to what your tax person is saying. It can be really useful for sending to your advisor. Your advisor really wants to see this data so they can make great retirement projections for you. So these are really great reports to share. And you can share the piece of the pot, like this visual image, by clicking on this button right here. It's going to give you a nice little visual output of what that report is going to look like, and it's a PNG, I think, or an image that you can share as well. So that's one report. I want to show you one more, and then we can look at building reports together. But another way to look at cash flow, before I move on, another way to look at a cash flow report is by account. So maybe you have split accounts, maybe you have separate accounts from your spouse, or you just have certain accounts used for certain things. You can click on that filter button and filter by accounts. What you would do is then choose the accounts that you want to see. So if you have split accounts, maybe you want to see your credit card, or maybe you just want to see the joint card, or maybe just your card. Maybe you want to see the joint account, or maybe just your credit checking account, so that you can see partner one's income and expenses, partner two's income and expenses. Those are some of the things that you're going to be able to see when you run these cash flow reports. And I grabbed the wrong account, but that is a really useful use case for how you can kind of, again, slice and dice what you're seeing in your reports. Let's see here. Let's remove that filter. Okay. Let's see here. So we're going to go to a spending report. A spending report is kind of some of my favorites with my clients. This is actually the area I love the most. So a spending report is you're going to be able to see the average, which is a new addition, which I absolutely love. This average is going to show you that month over month average for any of those areas that you want to see. So if I wanted to run a report on my discretionary spending, I would go to my categories here. And I would go ahead and select the categories that I consider discretionary spend or flexible spending. So maybe it's the shopping, maybe it's pets and fun money and that kind of thing. And maybe I just want to leave out, all the boring stuff, all the bills and all that stuff. If I just wanted to press apply here, it's going to show me, hey, where am I actually swiping that credit card during the month, and how roughly on average, how much am I spending month over month? If you are just starting to use reports, your reports are going to look a little bit like this, meaning that you might be missing some data because you just got started. But as you use Monarch over the month over month, you're going to have a lot of amazing months and a lot of trends to look at as you use Monarch over time. So if you're not seeing data here, it might just mean that you haven't, that you might have transactions from your bank account from that far away. But you also might have years of transactions to look through, which is very fabulous. So this is that month over month view. You can look at this again, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, so many views to look at. But you can also look at this as a total. This is a really useful report to also run for, again, planning for next year, right? You're planning for next year, you're setting your budgets, and also just reviewing everything that is going in Monarch. If there's an area of spend that you're like, well, I don't know how I spent this much on shopping, where did that $8,000 go? If you click on this, it's going to open up all the transactions for shopping, and you can review them, make sure it makes sense, and see, well, where did that actually end up going for you? There's lots of different viewpoints to use. There's two different types of views, right? You have the pie chart when you're looking at total spend, as well as a bar chart for total spend. So many different ways to see what you need in these reports. Another one that I just want to go through real quick is using tags for a report. In this case, what I would do is I'd clear all of the data in here. I'd clear that all out so I can run a fresh filter. And and I'd click on tags. And in this case, I'm going to show a summer trip, right? We went on a summer trip. I'm going to click on this and it's going to show me, when I press apply, it's going to show me what did we spend on this summer trip. And it's going to show me every category, and down below is every transaction related to that summer trip. This is a really useful way to look at it because sometimes, those trip expenses don't usually end up on the same month, right? First, you're buying the plane tickets, then you're buying the Airbnb, and it's spread over several months, right? And so when you look at it month to month, it can be a little tricky. But when you use tags and you have a broad enough date frame, you're able to see everything. Even if you booked the trip, last year, you can still see how much everything costs all at once. Awesome. Another tag idea for a lot of these things are, again, we went over taxes, business expenses, but also maybe a home improvement project. If you had a home improvement project that you're working on, if you use a tag for it, you can kind of throw everything in home improvement, but you can also see where it all went, right? You have not only just where it went as far as you bought some furniture for the project, but maybe you have some home maintenance, home improvement, maybe you went to Home Depot to get paint. Like, you can see all of this by using those tags without having to create categories that are unnecessary going forward. Right? If you only go on that summer vacation once, you don't need a whole category for it. You can use tags and get beautiful reports from that tag.
Taylor, related to the topic of tags, I'm curious how you advise your clients to use tags versus categories. And you kind of touched on it, but there were a couple of questions that came up in the chat around how to, like, let's say I wanted to exclude all my vacation expenses. Should I then have that as its own category to be able to do that easily? Is it easier to use tags for specific vacations? How do you typically guide people on how to use either or?
Yeah, great questions. So with tags, I usually tell people to use tags as a subcategory of a category, meaning you use these broad categories to put all your transaction in. But you don't want to necessarily go too much in depth, right? You don't want a ton of categories you're never going to use again. So tags are a way to either use as a subcategory. So that means that and usually the subcategory is something temporary. So these are things that are not going to ever happen again, like a summer vacation, like a wedding, like a home improvement project. This is a one-time thing that we do not need a category for going forward, right? That's one criteria, is if you don't want a category forever, using a tag is a really amazing way to do it. Now, another criteria would be to use a tag when you want to have a report using, like, kind of consolidating data amongst multiple categories. So like a vacation, right? You have your hotels, your entertainment, your food. That's a great use of a tag. For a business expense in your tax planning, you want to see meals, travel, deductible expenses, all of those things you want to see over multiple categories. And that's when you're going to also want to use a tag. It's kind of a way to, again, make it a subcategory, but to consolidate. Now, something to know is that when you talk about excluding, it is easier to exclude in the category version, meaning like it's way easier to kind of click out, hey, I don't want to see my travel and vacation when I run this report because maybe it was kind of wonky this year, and it's really easy to unclick this. Now you can do an untagged. You can click on excluding, like you can exclude everything that's untagged now. But Simon, I actually have a question for you. I'm assuming that it is everything that's a tagged, right? Like this would be everything that is a tag would not show up in the report, right? And maybe that's a weird question.
Yeah, so that one is by inclusion, right? So if you just wanted to see transactions that have 0 tags, you would just click untagged. But you could also choose to exclude everything else by selecting all and maybe excluding the tags that you don't care about.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's possible to exclude with tags, right? I do think it is, a lot of my clients, when they buy a house for the first time, or they're buying a car, or they are, these big one-off purchases that are really going to throw off their cash flow report. Oftentimes, it's up to you, but oftentimes I'm throwing in miscellaneous. Why? Because miscellaneous is really easy to exclude. And it's really those like one-off things that are like you're pretty sure never gonna happen again, that don't belong in the category. Even though like a big auto purchase could be put in auto payment, that's fine. But sometimes it just looks really funky when you're running a report and it's like, $20,000 and then 400 every month after, right? It's a little tricky. So it's really up to you on your needs, right? There's so many different ways to do this. That's just those are just a couple examples. Does that answer the question, Jenna? Do you feel like I hit on that enough, or do you
Yeah,
want
that was really helpful. One other related question that came up was around how you would build a report, like we saw earlier, to show rental income versus expenses.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we would do that. You would recommend doing that by using categories. I saw that was one of the filters.
Yes, yes. I would probably do that in categories. The reason why is, again, categories also comes into budget, right? You can't budget with tags, you can budget with categories. And so that's another one is like, hey, we probably want to budget your rental mortgage, rental expenses, rental stuff. So that's why we want a category for that. Now, if you're not using the budgeting features, still relevant to make sure it's an area that you can kind of plan with is using categories. Categories you can plan with. Tags are kind of more for reporting in a way, I would think. So in order to build a report on rental properties, what you would do is you'd click on the cash flow button because we want to see both income and expenses of that rental property. We would go to whatever time period. So I'll go ahead and keep last year as my time period. And I would use a filter and go ahead and clear the existing filters. I'd use a filter right here. And I would go ahead and click on rental income as my filter because I only want to see rental income. And then I would scroll down to find all of my rental expenses. And I would create a category for my rental property. In fact, I recommend creating a whole group for your rental property, unless you have like just one expense there. But in this case, I created a whole group. We have the mortgage, the HOA, and then maintenance. If I clicked apply now, it's going to show me the breakdown. Last year, there was $22,800 for rental income, $21,000 of rental expenses. I can see my profit here. And if you're happy with your profit, cool. Otherwise, this is the time to start making decisions for next year, right? And if this is a report that you're referring to often, you would also want to, let me do this by category. If you look at by category, you can see that breakdown a little bit better for all three sections that we just excluded for. If this is a report that you're looking at often, you'd want to click on this nice new save button. This save button will save this report so that you can refer back to this and easily go do those filters and see what your rental property expenses are very quickly. So we name this report. It gives those criteria of if I like to look at it consistently at last year. You can also remove the date or change whatever date you'd like, and then press save, and you can refer back to that report whenever you need.
Another thing to mention on saved reports is that you now have the ability to look at relative time frames. So you could have a report that's, your 2024 spending, for example, and it should look the same anytime you come back to it as long as the year has fully passed. But let's say you wanted to have a report that you can look back on month over month that shows you your discretionary spending. You can build that as a relative time frame. And so it will constantly update anytime you come back to it, which is part of what makes saved reports so convenient. You really only have to do all of that filtering and building one time.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, when we're doing, and there's a couple ways to do that too, right? You can do this month, and it'll always change it to this month. You can do the last 4 months, or 6 months, or 12 months, and it'll always just keep that report rolling. And you can use that saved report to save it based on that time period.
Another thing that came up in the chat was year over year reporting. How do you typically work with clients on looking at year over year comparisons?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few ways to do this. What I'm doing is I do clear that date range and I look at all time. And this really depends on how much data you have. If you're new to Monarch, you probably won't have multiple years. You might though. As you use Monarch, you're absolutely going to have year over year, and you definitely want to see what that's going to look like. So I would do this all time report here. And the way I would probably do that is there's a few different ways. One is when you click on that cash, instead of a sand key view, you'd click click on this cash flow view here or this one here. There's two different kinds. One's a stacked, one's side by side to see your income and expenses. But you can view this on a yearly basis. And so that way you can kind of see, okay, income and income for this year and last year all at once. We have 2024 and 2025. Of course, if you had more years, you would see 23 and 22 and all of that stuff. That's really helpful for spending. I really like the spend report in that regard. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to clear my filters. I'm going to do the date as all times. That's already set up. And if I did that change over time and the stacked bar graph, because it shows me the dollar amounts right above that, that's that stacked bar graph here. And looking at that yearly shows me my expenses on a year-over-year basis. And again, by category, group, merchant, all of that.
So helpful.
Yeah.
Another view, I know we this is outside of the reports page, but maybe we can go over to the cash flow page because there is a really cool way to get to some of those comparison charts as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you're exactly right. In the cash flow plays page, I kind of think of like as the simpler version of reports, which simple is sometimes better, right? Like because sometimes there's a lot going on in reports, and having cash flows are really slightly different view of your report section. And so it's the same way we can see year over year. We click on yearly up here. It's a nice simple button right there, and you can kind of compare these by hovering over. And when you click on this, you can also see down below where did all those expenses go for the year. And again, we can look at this monthly, quarterly, yearly. If you change to monthly, it's going to show you the same breakdown on a monthly basis. Now, if I were to click on this guy, let's say groceries, you're like, okay, well, I spent $12,000 on groceries this year. What does that look like on a month-to-month basis? If you click on this, it is going to open up the month-to-month spend. And you can kind of see, okay, well, you can hover over each of these to see what you've been spending. You can click on any of these to pull up those transactions and get into that monthly average for just one category at a time. And it's really slick to do that, right? You can click on shopping and see the year over year really quickly. And I keep going from monthly to yearly, but you can see that really, really quickly. Is there anything else about cash flow you wanted to go over, Jenna?
That was it. I think there's so much power in this view further down the page, particularly as you can toggle really easily between monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And then you can click, it's essentially one click to then see the month over month or year over year change without having to build a report to see that.
Exactly. Yeah. Real quick to see trends, changes on one category, which can be really, really useful. I think we all have a problem category that we are trying to keep an eye on. And this is probably the fastest way to get to that category to see, okay, how are we doing? What are we trying to make changes on? So
Yeah, and related to that, I know Chris just mentioned the example provided is just scratching the surface. It would be really great to overlay the 2 years to be able to see paired bars for each month. There are ways that you can do that. If you have all of your categories displayed, for example, it will start to probably feel like a lot of data all on one screen. But noted, I think that there's a lot of area of opportunity for us to provide those insights and also just make them more easily accessible because those trends I think are something that's so powerful and you can get to using reports, but we can probably make it even easier in the future for you to find those insights.
I do want to point out that it's something like looking at all categories at once, like you're saying, is very overwhelming. I very rarely look at this with my clients. We are usually looking at a specific area. So we're looking at that report on maybe just the bills, just the discretionary spending, just the food and dining to see how is food and dining over year. These can be a little bit more bite-sized, and it's so you just need to keep filtering for what you want to see. Yes, it would be nice to see it all at once. And, of course, that's definitely like the always trying to improve, of course. But saving these reports so like you can see year over year for groceries, it's going to be really easy. You'll have a whole list of those top saved reports, those areas that you're really focusing on. Because let's face it, there are areas you don't care about. You've been paying the same car payment for 4 years. You do not necessarily need to see that in the report, right? So you can exclude the things that you don't care about, keep the ones you do, and get meaningful data that way.
I'm curious because you alluded to how you typically use reports with clients. I would be really curious to learn what are the most helpful, most useful reports that you typically bring your clients to and that you hear your clients kind of have those aha moments.
So the most often I am in a spending report, and this is the view. We have it as monthly. I have it usually by category. I have it as change over time for the date period that we're looking at, and this stacked bar graph. I love this stacked bar graph because it gives me those numbers very quickly. And we are reviewing just the areas that they are trying to change. So as a financial coach, we're kind of looking at, there's only two ways to improve your financial situation. There's either increase income or decrease expenses. And we're looking at one of those opportunities, and we normally slice it. We're not trying to decrease all expenses, maybe just a category or two. And so we would filter for those categories. So I have definitely, I think, we all in some phase of our life definitely go start to creep up with the restaurants and bars, right? Not, could be totally happy with it. You might not be. But we're going to look at, hey, are we seeing that trend of the direction we want to go? Maybe we're trying to go up. Maybe we're trying to spend more dining out because we want to, save more time in our day, right? There's all the trends that you want to go on, but we are usually kind of filtering out for just one area at a time to make changes where we want to make changes. And then the other areas I would say I use often is the same report, looking at all categories, but I do love this totals view, mostly just to make sure things are getting categorized correctly. We do miss stuff sometimes, things get through. Now, if you set up everything correctly, and the AI is doing a lot of great work for you, so most of the time it doesn't happen, but there are some times where, we just want to make sure things are getting categorized correctly. This is the next best view. I'm going into gas. I'm saying, hey, does it make sense for last month to be that much money in gas? If not, we're going to click on it and just review it. This is where the aha moments comes, at least with a lot of my clients, is because they're not really sure how Monarch is really treating this data. When they categorize it, it's like kind of just, it's getting categorized, right? But here you can see the result of that categorization. And so if you click on gas, it's going to pull up all those things that you put in gas. And you can say, oh, this is gas. Okay, that's true. I did spend that much on gas. Or, there's no way I spent this much on groceries. And you click on it and you pull up all your transactions. You're just like, oh, okay, yep, we did. That's cool. And you can move on, right? Like it's the ability to see those that total amount month over month is really where a lot of those aha moments come in.
Awesome. I want to be mindful of time. I think maybe two more questions that I'll pull from the chat. One or a couple that came up were related to investments, how to use reports to track investment performance. So let's just touch on that quickly. We are a little bit limited, but I'll open the floor to you, Taylor, if you have any thoughts on the insights that you can get from using reports. And then also, folks, for the questions that you have or the things that you would like to see us build to better dive into investment performance, please drop that into the chat because that's definitely on our radar.
Yeah, great question there. So with the investment performance, like performance itself, you're going to find on this investments tab here to see like your stock trends, right? This reports section, you're really seeing what you're categorizing. So transaction data, it's very much heavy on transaction data. So if you've been categorizing your transactions from like to see your dividends, your interest, and all of that. You can run that report on income. And if you've been categorizing those dividends, interests, like all of those things, you can run that report here and just see, hey, how much have we earned as far as our investments go, as far as dividends and interest. You can look at your contributions as well, depending on how you categorize it. But for performance, you're going to find that in that investment tab here. If you've connected your investment accounts, and you'll see some of that data here. Does that answer the question, Jenna, or do you want to take that in a different direction?
No, I think it does. But like I said, please feel free to drop your input or feedback on what outside of what Taylor shared, what you'd like to see us build related to investments and investment performance.
Awesome.
Okay, let me just, another question that came up a couple of times was related to in the cash flow tab, why can we filter by tag but not category? And so maybe Simon can actually take this one because as Taylor mentioned earlier, we do have cash flow showing up in kind of a couple of different ways across the cash flow page and then also within reports. Ultimately, we will be looking to find the best approach for bringing these together so that there isn't duplication or so that it doesn't cause confusion. And so that's part of it, is that we are really investing in like making all of those filters really robust within the reports page. But Simon, I'll let you also take this if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The cash flow page was sort of like the first iteration of sort of reporting a while ago, and reports is the more powerful iteration of that. So if you do want to be filtering by tags, you probably want to use the reports page more frequently. It provides you the widest array of options for filtering, slicing and dicing, selecting the chart views that you're interested in. But like Jenna said, we're probably going to be looking to find ways to consolidate them, maybe in one way, so it's simpler for users.
Awesome. I know I saw a couple of other things come through as red threads in the chat. One is regarding more robust exporting of data. That is something that is on our radar. We definitely understand that there's a need for, outside of, you can do some exporting of the information right now, but making it a little bit more able to manipulate and just more complete. That is something we don't formally have on the roadmap right now, but it is something that we just talked about recently. So definitely heard that that is something that would be valuable. Um, I think that was the one other thing I wanted to touch on. Oh, mobile. Taylor, you mentioned this at the very beginning. Right now, reports are specific to desktop. We are exploring ways to bring it to mobile. There's a lot of design complexity to it, and we want to make sure that it's something that's robust and usable enough on mobile on a very small screen. So we just want to be really thoughtful about that, but it is something that we do plan on working on very soon. Simon, any other recent updates, like small but meaningful updates to reports that would be helpful for folks here to know about?
Yeah, sure. So the average and median data on those stacked bar charts is relatively new. It allows you to see averages by whatever, time frame you choose to select, which is nice. Um, that gives you like a better retrospective view on your spending on whatever time frame you'd like. Another interesting one is that with the new saved reports feature, you can choose not to include the chart view as part of your saved report, which is kind of nice for scenarios where you kind of just care about the collection of filters and date restrictions that you care about, and you don't so much care about the specific chart you're looking at. So for example, yeah, let's say you want this like yearly this year's bills, for example. When you save this report, maybe you don't really care about whether it's the pie chart or the bar chart or the horizontal bar chart, right? So you'll still be able to see that, oh, I have a saved report that utilizes this set of filters no matter where I go on the reports page, which is nice. So it kind of tracks you around.
Awesome. All right. Well, I hope this was really helpful to everyone here. I hope that you maybe found some new ideas for reports that would be helpful for you to build on your own and save and come back to later. We will share this recording. I know that came up in the chat as well. So yes, you will get a recording. I hope this was really helpful. Please also feel free, the registration came from my email. If you have any feedback on this session, I would love to hear it. Any other ideas you have for workshops that might be helpful in the future? I know budgeting certainly came up. That is something we can definitely do. But yeah, any feedback you guys have, we are always here. We're always open. And thanks for being here. And thank you, Taylor, so much for hosting. This was really incredible.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, everyone.